The hand of the Lord was upon me. He brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones.
The stunning success of the rebels forced the Romans to withdraw from the region. Bar Kokhba then declared Judea to be an independent kingdom.
Something incredible is happening right now, something the world hasn't seen in thousands of years. The ancient prophecy of Ezekiel is slowly coming to life. He spoke of a time when the Jewish people would return to their homeland after being scattered across the earth. Today, that return is unfolding before our eyes. From the deserts of Israel to the streets of Jerusalem, signs of this prophecy are everywhere. But is this a sign of something big? What does this mean for the world today, and for you? Join us as we reveal how Ezekiel's vision is rising from the past and shaping the future. Ezekiel's shocking vision: dry bones come alive. Over 2,500 years ago, a man stood in the middle of a valley surrounded by bones. Dry, lifeless, scattered bones. The man was the prophet Ezekiel. God had brought him to this place, not in real life, but in a powerful vision.
The hand of the Lord was upon me. He brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones.
And what he saw was terrifying. This valley wasn't just a place of death. It was a symbol of a people who had lost everything. Their land, their hope, their identity, and it looked like the end. Then, something incredible happened. God asked Ezekiel a question. "Son of man, can these bones live?" It was a question that didn't make sense. How could bones, dry and broken, come back to life? But Ezekiel, wise and humble, answered, "Sovereign Lord, you alone know." And with that, God gave him a command. "Prophesy to these bones. Say to them, 'Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord.'" As Ezekiel obeyed, the ground began to shake. The bones started to rattle. They began to move, coming together, bone to bone. Next came tendons, then flesh, then skin, but they were still lifeless. God spoke again. "Prophesy to the breath, say, 'Come, breath, from the four winds and breathe into these slain, that they may live.'" And when Ezekiel did, breath entered them. They stood on their feet, a vast army, alive and strong. This wasn't just a strange dream, it was a message. God told Ezekiel what it meant. These bones are the people of Israel. At the time, Israel was broken. The people were in exile, living as captives in Babylon. Their temple was destroyed, their land was gone, they felt forgotten. They said, "Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone." But God wasn't finished with them. He promised to bring them back to life, spiritually and physically. He would gather them from the nations, bring them back to their land, and breathe new life into them. For centuries, this vision seemed impossible. Israel remained scattered. The land was empty. The people were spread across the world. But the prophecy never died. Generation after generation held on to the promise, waiting, praying, hoping. And now, in modern times, we are seeing something amazing. What Ezekiel saw in that valley is beginning to happen. The bones are moving, the people of Israel are returning, the land is waking up, and the breath of life is coming back. This vision was never just about the past. It's about right now. It's a picture of restoration, of a miracle in motion. A people once thought to be lost, rising again. It all started with a valley of dry bones, but it ends with a nation reborn. But how did this exile happen in the first place? It gets even more intriguing from here. The story of the exile begins over 2,600 years ago, during the time of the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah.
The Jewish kingdom, a glorious simpatico, majesty, nobility, justice, and holiness.
These were the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God's chosen people living in the land promised to them by God. For hundreds of years they lived in their own land, with their own kings and their temple, the holy place where they worshipped God. But things started to change. The kingdom of Israel was divided into two parts: the northern kingdom, called Israel, and the southern kingdom, called Judah. Both kingdoms faced many challenges: wars, political struggles, and threats from powerful neighbors like Egypt and Assyria. The people often turned away from God, worshiping idols and ignoring the laws given to them by Moses. Because of this, prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel warned them again and again: if they didn't change their ways, disaster would come. Despite these warnings, the kings and the people did not listen. They continued in their rebellion and unfaithfulness. Then, around 722 BC, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians were one of the most powerful armies in the ancient world.
But the Romans were merely waiting to counterattack until they had assembled one of the greatest armies in their history.
They destroyed the capital city of Samaria, captured many Israelites, and scattered them across their empire. This event marked the first great exile, often called the Lost Tribes of Israel, because those people were never fully heard from again. But the southern kingdom of Judah remained. For about 150 more years, Judah continued as a small kingdom. They had their own kings, their temple in Jerusalem, and their traditions. Yet, they still faced great challenges. The people struggled between faithfulness to God and following the ways of other nations around them. Finally, the biggest crisis came during the 6th century BC. The Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, rose to power and became the new dominant force in the region. Babylon was a mighty city, full of wealth and power. Nebuchadnezzar wanted to control all the lands around him, including Judah. At first, Judah was a vassal state, meaning they paid tribute to Babylon but kept some independence. However, the kings of Judah rebelled against Babylon several times. This angered Nebuchadnezzar. In response, he sent his army to invade Judah. In 597 BC, the Babylonians captured Jerusalem for the first time. They took King Jehoiakim and many leaders, craftsmen, and skilled workers as captives back to Babylon. This was the beginning of the exile for many Jews, but the worst was yet to come. A few years later, in 586 BC, after another rebellion, the Babylonians returned with even greater force. They destroyed Jerusalem completely. The great temple, built by King Solomon and the center of Jewish worship, was burned to the ground. The city walls were torn down. The people were devastated. Thousands more were taken captive and forced to live in Babylon, far from their homeland. Life in Babylon was hard. The exiles were far from home, living among strangers with different gods, languages, and customs. They mourned the loss of their temple and their land. Many wondered if God had abandoned them. But even in exile, the Jewish people did not lose their faith. Prophets like Ezekiel and Jeremiah reminded them that God was still with them, even in a foreign land. They spoke of hope, restoration, and a future return to their homeland. Ezekiel's vision of dry bones coming to life was one such message, telling the people that one day God would bring them back. The exile changed everything. It forced the Jewish people to hold tightly to their identity, their faith, and their promise of return. It was a time of suffering, yes, but also a time of deep spiritual growth. After 70 years, the Persian Empire conquered Babylon. The Persian king, Cyrus the Great, allowed the Jewish exiles to return home and rebuild the temple. This was a hopeful new beginning, but the journey to fully restore their nation would take many more years. Ezekiel's prophecy wasn't just words on a page. It was a promise to a people who had lost almost everything. And it was a promise that one day, the dry bones would live again. But did the dry bones really live again? And what's happening today? The miracle of 1948. For centuries, the idea of a Jewish homeland was seen by many as a dream that would never come true. The people were scattered, the land was controlled by others, and the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. After nearly 2,000 years without a nation, the bones seemed too dry, the hope too faint. But then, something happened that shocked the world. The year was 1948. Just 3 years after the horrors of World War II and the unimaginable tragedy of the Holocaust, the Jewish people faced a new challenge. They were homeless, hurting, and desperate for a safe place to call home. Millions had lost everything. Families were broken, communities wiped away. And yet, amidst this darkness, a flame of hope was burning. In the middle of a small corner of the Middle East, something incredible was about to happen. The land of Israel, ancient and holy, was about to come alive again as a modern nation. The story of Israel's rebirth is nothing short of a miracle that no one could have planned or predicted, and it started with a declaration. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the leader of the Jewish community in Palestine, stood before a small crowd in Tel Aviv. With trembling hands and a hopeful heart, he read aloud the words that would change history forever. "We hereby declare the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel, to be known as the State of Israel." For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people had a country of their own.
But on May 14, 1948, Britain withdrew and the State of Israel was proclaimed, the first Jewish state to be established in 2,000 years.
But the road to this moment wasn't an easy one. The new state was immediately met with threats from its neighbors. Arab armies from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq invaded, determined to destroy the newborn nation. The Jewish people were outnumbered and outgunned. They had no large army, no heavy weapons, and very little support. Many experts around the world said Israel wouldn't survive. Some said it would be wiped off the map within months. The dry bones were not supposed to walk again. The miracle was not supposed to happen. But guess what? It did. Against all odds, the people of Israel fought bravely. They were determined to protect their home, the land their ancestors had prayed for every year during Passover. They were fueled by faith, courage, and the promise of Ezekiel's vision. They knew they were part of something bigger than themselves. Every person played a role in the battle for survival, and slowly but surely, Israel won. Not only did they survive, they began to thrive. New immigrants poured in from all over the world, eager to start fresh. Jewish refugees from Europe, survivors of the Holocaust, and Jews fleeing persecution in Arab countries all found a home in Israel. The country grew quickly. Cities, farms, schools, and roads were built from nothing. The land itself seemed to respond, blooming with new life. This was the beginning of a modern miracle. The prophecy of dry bones coming to life was not just ancient poetry. It was happening before the eyes of the world. But the miracle of 1948 was more than just a military victory or a new government. It was a spiritual revival. The Jewish people had been scattered like dry bones for centuries. Now, they were being brought back together, stronger, united, and alive. The land was more than dirt and rocks. It was the heart of a people's identity and faith. Many who witnessed the birth of Israel described it as a moment of destiny, a moment when history and prophecy met, a moment when what seemed impossible became real. The United Nations had voted to divide the land into Jewish and Arab states just months earlier. This decision was controversial and led to conflict, but it also gave the Jewish people international recognition, a sign that the world was beginning to accept their return. Still, the challenges were far from over. The new country faced years of war, political struggles, and constant threats. But every step forward was a victory for the prophecy. Every new immigrant was another bone coming to life. Every field planted, every city built, was a sign of hope renewed. In just a few years, Israel transformed from a small, fragile state into a country known for its innovation, resilience, and determination. When Ezekiel saw the valley of dry bones, he could never have imagined the struggles ahead. But he saw the promise, a promise that one day God would breathe life back into the people of Israel. And in 1948, that promise began to come true. The return and the land's new life today, a living fulfillment of Ezekiel's prophecy. Today, that promise is coming true in an incredible way. People from over 100 countries and cultures are returning to Israel. They come with different languages: Hebrew, Russian, Amharic, French, Arabic, English, and bring with them a rich tapestry of traditions and histories. Some arrive from bustling cities in America and Europe. Others come from small villages in Ethiopia or Yemen. They are young and old, rich and poor, religious and secular, but they share one dream: to rebuild their homeland. This great return is not just a modern migration. It is a living fulfillment of Ezekiel's ancient prophecy. In Ezekiel 37, the Valley of Dry Bones was a picture of Israel's exile, a nation scattered, lifeless, and forgotten. But the prophecy didn't end there. God promised those dry bones would come together, grow flesh, and be filled with breath, brought back to life as a united, living nation. Today, Israel is exactly that. Jewish communities from every corner of the globe are coming home, like scattered bones returning to the body. The Hebrew word for return is aliyah, which means to go up. Every person making aliyah is part of this historic journey, climbing back to the land that holds their roots, their faith, and their future. The return has been shaped by courage and determination. Many left behind everything they knew: families, jobs, languages, to start fresh in a land they had never seen. For some, it meant escaping danger or persecution. For others, it was a chance to connect with their heritage. Yet all share the hope of becoming part of a living prophecy. And the story does not stop with people alone. As the bones came alive, so did the land. When the Jewish people returned, they faced a land that was often dry, rocky, and full of deserts. Centuries of neglect had left much of the soil barren and lifeless. But the vision of Ezekiel hinted at more than just the return of a people. It promised the land itself would be transformed. And that transformation is happening right before our eyes. Where once there was desert, now there are fields of green. Where once stood empty hills, now rise thriving cities and towns. Modern Israel is a land blooming with life, industry, and innovation. Agriculture has been one of the greatest miracles of this rebirth. Using ancient knowledge and cutting-edge technology, the land that seemed impossible to farm now produces vast amounts of fruits, vegetables, and flowers. Techniques like drip irrigation, developed in Israel, save water and nourish crops even in the driest places. Fields that once lay fallow now burst with color and abundance. Beyond farming, Israel has become a global leader in technology and science. From high-tech startups to world-class universities, the nation is a hub of creativity and invention. Companies working in medicine, water conservation, cybersecurity, and renewable energy have made Israel one of the most advanced countries in the world. This blossoming of knowledge and growth is another sign that the dry bones are not just living, they are thriving. Cities like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, and Beersheba are bustling centers of culture, business, and life. Skyscrapers rise where once there were only empty fields. Public transportation, hospitals, schools, and parks show the care and investment in building a strong, vibrant society. Even the natural environment has responded. Forests have been planted, deserts greened, and nature reserves established to protect wildlife and beauty. The land itself seems to echo Ezekiel's vision: bones gaining flesh, sinews growing, skin covering them, and breath returning. For many who study this miracle, The return of the Jewish people and the rebirth of the land are two parts of the same story. One cannot happen without the other. Just as Ezekiel saw the dry bones come together and grow flesh, today we see a people returning and a land coming alive. The ancient prophecy that once seemed impossible is unfolding in real time. It's a story that brings hope, not just for Israel, but for anyone who believes in the power of faith and restoration. But however, the journey is far from over. Challenges remain. Political conflicts, security threats, and cultural differences test the unity and strength of the nation. But every day, the bones keep coming alive. Every new immigrant, every new field planted, every new city built is a step closer to the full promise. This is more than history. It is a living miracle. It is Ezekiel's prophecy, breathing, growing, and shining in the 21st century. Intriguingly, many believe the prophecy of Ezekiel isn't finished yet. The bones may have come together. The body may be standing. But is the spirit fully alive? In Ezekiel 37, God doesn't just bring the bones back to life physically. He also promises to put my spirit in them. This speaks of a spiritual awakening, a deeper inner revival that many believe is still on the horizon. Some say we're watching the physical restoration now, but the spiritual part is just beginning. There are signs of it. Across Israel, more people are asking big questions about faith, identity, and purpose. Jewish people are reconnecting with their spiritual roots. Messianic movements are growing. Christians around the world are watching Israel like never before, and something is stirring. Israel has become a global center of attention. From political debates to media headlines, from religious pilgrimages to tech conferences, everyone is looking at this small but powerful nation. Could this be what the prophets meant when they said the nations would gather around Jerusalem? Could the attention we're seeing now be part of a larger divine plan? Some believe we're living in the birth pains of a greater fulfillment, a time when history is not just repeating, but accelerating. And as this prophecy unfolds, it raises a deeper question. What does this mean for you and the rest of the world? Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Ezekiel's prophecy and the modern miracle unfolding before our eyes. What do you think about these prophecies unfolding in Israel? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the following video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.